My name is Sarah Mitchell, and every year our family holds the same 4th of July BBQ at Uncle Robert's house in Virginia Beach. Every year, my cousin Tyler uses it as his personal opportunity to humiliate me in front of the entire extended family. This year was supposed to be different. This year, I just returned from an 8-month deployment that I couldn't talk about, carrying achievements I couldn't share, with a call sign that meant everything to the people who mattered and nothing to a family who'd never understood my service. Tyler spent the morning calling me a wannabe soldier and telling everyone my military stories were fake. He mocked my uniform, questioned my rank, and suggested I was just playing dress up for attention. The whole family laughed along like they always did. But when Uncle Robert, Tyler's father, and a 20-year Navy SEAL veteran, overheard my call sign during a classified phone call I had to take, everything changed in an instant. Because sometimes the people who mock your service have never met someone who actually understands what that service means. And sometimes the most satisfying justice comes from the last person you'd expect to defend you. What happened during the first hour of that BBQ would prove that some family dynamics never change no matter how much you achieve or sacrifice. I arrived at Uncle Robert's house in Virginia Beach at exactly noon, carrying a cooler of beer and wearing civilian clothes that still somehow managed to look military. After 8 months of deployment, it was impossible to completely shed the bearing that marked you as active duty, no matter how hard you tried to blend in. The Mitchell family. 4th of July BBQ was a tradition that stretched back 15 years, always held at Uncle Robert's sprawling backyard with its perfect view of the Chesapeake Bay. Robert was Dad's younger brother, a retired Navy SEAL who'd done 4 tours in Iraq and Afghanistan before settling into a comfortable civilian life as a defense contractor. His son Tyler, my 26-year-old cousin, had inherited all of his father's physical presence but none of his character. Where Uncle Robert was humble about his service and respectful of others who served, Tyler was loud, obnoxious, and seemed to take personal pleasure in making me look small at every family gathering. The pattern that had been repeating itself for years was about to play out again, but this time with consequences Tyler couldn't imagine. Well, well, well. Tyler's voice carried across the backyard the moment I stepped through the gate. If it isn't Captain America herself, did you remember to salute yourself in the mirror this morning, Sarah? The joke got the expected laughs from my assembled relatives, about 20 people spread across picnic tables, lawn chairs, and around the pool. Aunts, uncles, cousins, and family friends who'd heard Tyler's routine so many times, they'd started to expect it as part of the entertainment. Hey, Tyler, I replied with the practiced smile I'd learned to wear at these gatherings. Good to see you too. Oh, come on, Sarah. Don't be so serious. We're just having fun. Tyler was already holding a beer despite it being barely noon, his face flushed with the kind of confidence that comes from being the center of attention. Tell everyone about your latest heroic mission. Did you save any villages this time? Rescue any hostages? The mockery that revealed Tyler had never understood the difference between service and spectacle. I mostly do logistics coordination, I said diplomatically, the same response I'd been giving for 3 years. Nothing as exciting as you make it sound. Logistics coordination, Tyler repeated loudly enough for everyone to hear. That's military speak for I count supplies in a warehouse. You're nuts, right, folks? More laughter. Aunt Linda, Tyler's mother, shook her head with amused exasperation. Tyler, leave your cousin alone. She's serving her country. Serving her country by filing paperwork? Tyler corrected. Sarah, be honest with everyone. What do you actually do? Because I'm pretty sure the real soldiers are doing the real work while you're playing with spreadsheets. The diminishment that showed Tyler's complete ignorance about what modern military operations actually required. I could have corrected him. I could have explained that logistics coordination was a cover story, that I actually coordinated special operations throughout the Middle East, that the paperwork I filed determined which missions got greenlit and which personnel came home alive. But operational security meant keeping my real role classified, even from family, especially from family members who couldn't be trusted to understand the implications of what I actually did. Someone has to make sure the real soldiers have what they need, I said instead, maintaining the fiction that protected everyone in the yard from knowing how many lives had depended on my decisions over the past 8 months. Tyler wasn't satisfied with my deflection. But you don't actually go on missions, right? You don't kick down doors or anything cool like that? Tyler, Uncle Robert's voice carried a warning tone from where he stood manning the grill. Show some respect. I am showing respect, Dad. I'm respecting the truth. Sarah's never seen combat, never been in real danger, never done anything except push papers around. But she walks around acting like she's some kind of war hero. The accusation that would have been laughable if it wasn't so frustrating. I don't act like anything, I replied, my patience beginning to wear thin. I just do my job. Your job, Tyler snorted. Which is what, exactly? Because I've asked you probably 50 times over the years, and you always give me the same vague non answer about logistics and coordination. He wasn't wrong about that. I had been giving vague non answers because the alternative was explaining that I coordinated drone strikes, authorized special forces insertions, and made real time tactical decisions that affected operations across 3 time zones. Maybe if you actually listened when I answered, you'd understand better, I said. Oh, I listen. I listen to you talk about how you can't discuss your work because it's classified. I listen to you act like you're some kind of secret agent when really you're probably just managing inventory for a base supply depot. If you've ever had a family member who consistently diminished your achievements because they didn't understand them, you know how infuriating Tyler's ignorance was. Tell me in the comments about a time when someone mocked something important to you. Your stories help other people feel less alone. The conversation was drawing more attention from the rest of the family. Conversations around other tables had stopped as people tuned in to watch Tyler's annual performance of humiliating his military cousin. Tyler, that's enough, said my father, but his tone was more resigned than authoritative. Dad had given up trying to control Tyler's behavior years ago, around the same time he'd stopped defending my military service against Tyler's attacks. What? I'm just asking legitimate questions about my cousin's mysterious military career. Sarah, you've been in the Navy for what? 6 years now? 7, I corrected. 7 years. And in 7 years, you've never once told us about a single specific thing you've actually done. No stories about interesting assignments. No descriptions of challenging missions. No details about your colleagues or your duties. Tyler was building to something, his voice getting louder and more theatrical as he warmed to his theme. You know what I think? I think Sarah's military service is mostly imaginary. I think she sits at a desk somewhere filing reports that nobody reads. And she's created this whole mysterious persona to make herself seem more important than she really is. The theory that was so completely wrong, it was almost impressive in its ignorance. Tyler, Uncle Robert said again, his voice carrying more authority this time. Drop it. Dad, I'm not trying to be mean. I'm just saying what everyone's thinking. Sarah acts like she can't talk about her work because it's top secret, but really she can't talk about it because there's nothing interesting to talk about. He took another drink and gestured toward me with his beer bottle. I mean, look at her. Does she look like someone who's seen combat? Does she look like someone who's been through anything dangerous or challenging? The visual assessment that revealed Tyler's Hollywood-influenced ideas about what military service looked like. What exactly do you think a combat veteran is supposed to look like? I asked. I don't know, military, more badass? You look like an accountant who bought a uniform at a costume shop. The insult hit harder than I'd expected. After 8 months of making life and death decisions in a forward operating base, being compared to someone playing dress up was particularly galling. Tyler, you don't know what you're talking about, I said, my diplomatic facade beginning to crack. Don't I? Okay then, prove me wrong. Tell us one real story about your military service. Just one. Something specific. Something that actually happened to you personally. Something that proves you've done more than shuffle paperwork. The challenge that put me in an impossible position between maintaining operational security and defending my honor. I looked around the table at my family members, all of them watching this confrontation with varying degrees of entertainment and discomfort. They wanted me to respond, to defend myself, to prove Tyler wrong with specific examples of my service. But I couldn't. not without compromising ongoing operations, revealing classified methodologies, or exposing strategic capabilities that enemy forces would love to know about. I can't discuss specific operations, I said. Of course you can't, Tyler said triumphantly, because there are no specific operations to discuss. Tyler, you're being an ass, said my cousin Jennifer, Tyler's younger sister. Sarah doesn't have to prove anything to you. Actually, I think she does, Tyler replied. We're family. We support each other. We're proud of each other's achievements. But how can we be proud of achievements that might not exist? He stood up and moved closer to where I was sitting, his beer giving him courage to push boundaries he might normally respect. Sarah, I'm going to ask you a direct question, and I want a direct answer. In your 7 years of military service, have you ever personally been in a situation where you were in physical danger? The question that tested whether I could maintain my cover story under direct interrogation. The truthful answer was yes, multiple times. The drone strike in Syria, where I'd had to coordinate evacuations while under rocket attack. The forward base in Iraq, where I'd spent 3 days directing operations while the perimeter was under siege. The helicopter insertion in Afghanistan, where I'd been the primary intelligence officer for a hostage rescue that had gone sideways. But I couldn't say any of that without revealing operational details that remained classified at the highest levels. I've been deployed to active combat zones, I said carefully. That's not what I asked. I asked if you've personally been in danger. Not whether you've been to dangerous places, but whether you've personally faced threats. Tyler was enjoying this, feeding off the audience of family members who were hanging on every word of his interrogation. Sarah, it's a simple yes or no question. Have you ever been shot at? The answer was yes, multiple times. Have you ever shot back? The answer was yes, though not in the way Tyler was imagining. Have you ever seen combat? The answer was yes, from command centers and coordination positions that put me closer to the action than most people would ever be. But I couldn't say yes to any of these questions without opening conversations that would lead to classified information, and Tyler knew it. See? Tyler announced to the assembled family. She can't answer because the answer is no. 7 years in the military, and Sarah's never been closer to combat than watching war movies. The conclusion was so wrong it was almost funny, but the way my family nodded in understanding was heartbreaking. Tyler, that's not fair, Aunt Linda protested weakly. Not everyone in the military sees combat. That's true, Mom. But not everyone in the military pretends they're some kind of secret operative either. Sarah acts like she's Jason Bourne when really she's probably processing purchase orders for toilet paper. The comparison that revealed Tyler's complete ignorance about how modern warfare actually worked. Uncle Robert, who'd been quiet through most of this exchange, finally spoke up from his position at the grill. Tyler, you don't know what you're talking about. Modern military operations involve a lot of coordination and logistics that civilians don't understand. Dad, you're a SEAL. You've actually done real military work. Don't you think it's weird that Sarah can never give us any details about what she does? Uncle Robert flipped a burger with more force than necessary. I think operational security is a real thing, and I think you should drop this conversation. But Dad, drop it. The paternal command that should have ended the confrontation, but only motivated Tyler to find new angles of attack. Tyler sat back down, but his expression made it clear he wasn't finished. He'd tasted blood in the water, and he was going to keep circling until he found a way to deliver a killing blow to what he saw as my pretentious military persona. You know what I think the real problem is? Tyler said, ostensibly to the table, but clearly speaking loud enough for me to hear. I think Sarah joined the military because she wanted to feel important, and when the reality turned out to be boring desk work, she invented this mysterious, classified persona to make herself seem more interesting. Tyler, Jennifer warned. Stop. I'm not trying to be mean, Jen. I'm just concerned about Sarah's relationship with reality. It's not healthy to create elaborate fantasies about your own importance. The psychological analysis from someone who'd never served a day in uniform was the final insult. You think I'm fantasizing about my military service? I asked. I think you're fantasizing about the importance of your military service. Tyler clarified. I think you do some kind of administrative work that you've inflated in your own mind into something significant and classified. He leaned back in his chair with the satisfied expression of someone who thought he'd made an unassailable point. Sarah, prove me wrong. Give me one concrete example of something important you've actually done. Not vague references to classified logistics, but something specific that demonstrates real military achievement. The ultimatum that forced me to choose between maintaining operational security and letting Tyler's narrative define me in front of my entire family. The challenge hung in the air as conversations around other tables stopped. Everyone was now openly watching our confrontation, waiting to see how I'd respond to Tyler's public demand for proof of my worth. I looked at Uncle Robert, hoping for some kind of intervention or support, but he was focused intently on the grill, clearly trying to stay out of a family drama that had escalated beyond his comfort level. I looked at my father, who was studying his beer bottle like it contained answers to questions he didn't want to ask. I looked at the assembled family members, relatives who'd known me my entire life but had never bothered to really understand what my military service meant or required, and I realized that no matter what I said, Tyler would find a way to dismiss it, and my family would let him. You know what, Tyler? I said, standing up from the picnic table. You're right. The admission surprised him. His expression shifted from triumphant to confused. I am? You're absolutely right that I can't give you specific examples of classified operations. You're right that operational security prevents me from discussing details about missions, personnel, or strategic capabilities. Tyler's confusion deepened. This wasn't the defensive reaction he'd been expecting. So, you admit that you can't prove you've done anything important? I admit that I can't prove anything to you because you're not cleared to receive that proof. But Tyler, here's something I can prove. What I was about to reveal would change the power dynamic of our confrontation forever. I pulled out my phone and scrolled to my contact list, then handed it to Tyler. Call the Pentagon duty officer. The number's in my contacts under Duty Officer Joint Chiefs. Tell them you want to verify the current assignment and security clearance level for Captain Sarah Mitchell. Give them my service number, which is also in my phone. Tyler stared at the phone like it might bite him. I'm not calling the Pentagon. Why not? If I'm lying about my military importance, they'll tell you I'm just some administrative clerk. If I'm telling the truth, they'll confirm that I'm not authorized to discuss operational details with civilian family members. Sarah, that's crazy. I can't just call the Pentagon. Sure you can. It's a simple phone call. Either I'm an insignificant paper pusher who's been lying to you for 7 years, or I'm a senior officer whose work actually is classified at levels that prevent me from sharing details with people who don't have appropriate clearances. The offer that revealed I was willing to bet my entire military career on shutting Tyler up. Tyler held my phone, but made no move to dial. The confidence he'd shown all afternoon was evaporating as he realized I was calling his bluff in a way he hadn't anticipated. I don't need to call anyone, he said finally. This is just another deflection. You're trying to make this about security clearances, when really it's about the fact that you can't name a single important thing you've ever done. Tyler, I said quietly, the fact that you think importance can only be measured by things you're allowed to talk about tells me everything I need to know about your understanding of military service. And the fact that you hide behind classification rules tells me everything I need to know about your actual military achievements. The standoff that might have continued indefinitely if my phone hadn't chosen that moment to ring. The ringtone was distinctive. Not my usual tone, but the specific sound I'd programmed for calls that came through secure military channels. A tone that meant someone with appropriate clearance levels was calling about something that required immediate attention. I need to take this, I said, reaching for my phone. Tyler held it away from me. See, another convenient interruption to avoid answering direct questions. Tyler, that's a classified call. I need to take it immediately. How do I know it's classified? How do I know you didn't just ask someone to call and rescue you from this conversation? The moment when Tyler's ignorance would put him in direct contact with the reality he'd been denying. Fine, I said, my patience finally exhausted. Answer it. Tell whoever's calling that Captain Mitchell is busy being interrogated by her civilian cousin about whether her military service is real. Tyler's eyes widened. He clearly hadn't expected me to escalate the confrontation to that level. I'm not answering your phone. Then give it back so I can take a call that might involve American lives. American lives, Tyler repeated mockingly. Right, because Sarah Mitchell is so important that people's lives depend on her answering phone calls. The phone kept ringing. Tyler kept holding it away from me, and our entire family kept watching this confrontation spiral into something none of them understood. What happened when Tyler finally answered that call would destroy his narrative about my military service and force Uncle Robert to make a choice between his son's ego and his respect for actual military achievement. The phone rang one more time, and Tyler, apparently deciding to call what he thought was my bluff, finally hit the answer button. Hello? He said into the phone, his voice dripping with sarcasm. You've reached the personal phone of Captain Sarah Mitchell, hero of the filing cabinet and defender of the supply depot. She's currently busy proving to her family that she's actually important. Can I take a message? And that's when Tyler learned the difference between mocking someone's service and disrespecting someone whose service actually mattered. The voice that came through the phone was clear enough for several people to hear. Military, authoritative, and completely unamused by Tyler's attempt at humor. This is Colonel James Patterson, Joint Operations Center, Pentagon. I need to speak with Captain Mitchell immediately regarding Operation Silver Eagle. This is a priority alpha communication requiring immediate response. The silence that followed was so complete, you could hear Tyler's beer bottle trembling in his other hand. The silence that followed Colonel Patterson's voice was so profound that even the distant sound of boats on the Chesapeake Bay seemed to pause in respect. Tyler stood frozen with my phone pressed to his ear, his face cycling through expressions of shock, confusion, and dawning horror. Sir, Tyler managed to croak into the phone, his earlier bravado completely evaporated. I. This is Tyler Mitchell. I'm Captain Mitchell's cousin. She's right here. Put her on immediately, came the colonel's clipped response. This communication is time sensitive. Tyler's hand shook as he extended the phone toward me, his eyes wide with something approaching panic. The family members within earshot had gone completely silent, all of them staring at this unexpected development in what they'd thought was just another family argument. What Colonel Patterson told me during that call would prove to my family that Tyler's assessment of my military importance had been catastrophically wrong. I took the phone and stepped away from the picnic table, moving toward the edge of Uncle Robert's deck where I could speak without the entire family listening to classified information. Captain Mitchell here, sir. Captain, we have a developing situation in the Arabian Sea that requires your immediate input on operational parameters. Are you in a secure location for a classified discussion? I looked back at my family, all of them still frozen in their seats, watching me with expressions ranging from curiosity to disbelief. Negative, sir. I'm at a family gathering. I can be at a secure location within 30 minutes. Captain, I need preliminary assessment parameters now. Can you confirm your current security clearance level for Operation Silver Eagle? The mention of Silver Eagle would mean nothing to my family, but it represented 3 months of strategic planning that could determine the success or failure of a hostage rescue operation. Sir, I hold TSSCI clearance with Silver Eagle access, but I'm currently in a non-secure environment with multiple civilians present. Understood. Captain, I need you to confirm operational readiness for Package Alpha. Time-sensitive extraction scenario, coordinates you reviewed last week before your leave. My mind immediately shifted into operational mode, accessing strategic files and tactical assessments that had nothing to do with Tyler's accusations or my family's misconceptions about my military service. Sir, Package Alpha was assessed as viable with appropriate air support and weather conditions. Recommended extraction window opens at 0300 local time, closes at 0430. Confirmed. Captain, I need you to contact Lieutenant Colonel Sarah Chen immediately upon conclusion of this call. Silver Eagle has been moved to active status. Report to your duty station within 4 hours. The orders that would cut my family BBQ short and prove that American military operations actually did depend on my immediate response. Understood, sir. Reporting for duty within 4 hours. One more thing, Captain. The Joint Chiefs specifically requested your operational assessment for this mission. Your strategic recommendations from the April briefing have been adopted as primary tactical protocol. The comment was professional courtesy, acknowledging that my previous work had shaped current operations. But I could see Tyler straining to hear every word, his face reflecting growing understanding that this phone call was far more serious than he'd anticipated. Thank you, sir. I'll contact Colonel Chen immediately. Outstanding work as always, Captain Mitchell. Pentagon out. As I hung up the phone, I turned back to face a family that was finally beginning to understand what Tyler's ignorance had cost him. Tyler was still standing exactly where I'd left him, holding his beer bottle like a shield against reality he wasn't prepared to face. Uncle Robert had abandoned his position at the grill and moved closer, his military experience allowing him to read the situation in ways the rest of the family couldn't. Sarah, he said quietly. Was that what I think it was? Operational recall, Uncle Robert. I need to report for duty. Tyler found his voice, though it came out higher and less confident than usual. That was really the Pentagon? That was Colonel James Patterson, Joint Operations Center. The same Colonel Patterson whose number is in my phone contacts, which I offered to let you verify an hour ago. The reality check that was beginning to make my family understand the scope of Tyler's mistake. Dad, who'd been silent through most of Tyler's interrogation, finally spoke up. Sarah, what's Operation Silver Eagle? Classified, Dad, but it's the kind of operation that requires immediate response from senior personnel with appropriate clearance levels. Senior personnel, Tyler repeated weakly. But you're just a captain. Uncle Robert answered before I could. Tyler, in military intelligence operations, rank doesn't always correspond to responsibility level. Sarah holds security clearances that most generals don't have access to. But she said she does logistics coordination. Tyler protested, still clinging to his narrative despite the evidence demolishing it around him. Logistics coordination for special operations, I clarified. I coordinate the supply chains, personnel movements, and strategic support for missions like the one I was just recalled for. What I explained next would make Tyler understand that his Hollywood-influenced ideas about military importance had been completely wrong. Tyler, when you asked if I'd ever been in danger, the answer is yes. But not the kind of danger you were imagining. I've coordinated drone strikes while sitting in bunkers that were under rocket attack. I've directed helicopter extractions while monitoring enemy communications in real time. I've made strategic decisions about personnel deployment while listening to live audio feeds from firefights. The family was listening with the kind of attention they'd never shown my military service before. When you asked if I'd ever seen combat, the answer is yes. Through satellite feeds, drone cameras, and real-time communication with teams in the field. I see more combat in a month than most infantry soldiers see in an entire deployment. Tyler's face had gone pale. But you never said, I never said because operational security prevents me from discussing classified missions with people who don't have appropriate clearances. Even family. If you've ever had someone completely misunderstand your profession because they only knew the Hollywood version, you understand how satisfying this moment of education was. Tell me in the comments about a time when you had to explain what your job actually involves. I love hearing about people's real work versus what others assume. Uncle Robert was nodding as my explanation continued. Tyler, what Sarah does is called intelligence coordination. It's some of the most important and dangerous work in the military, but it doesn't involve kicking down doors or shooting bad guys. But it involves making decisions that determine whether the people who do kick down doors come home alive, I added. The missions you see in movies? Someone like me planned the logistics, coordinated the support, and monitored the execution in real time. Tyler set down his beer bottle with shaking hands. Sarah, I had no idea. I thought you thought I was just pushing paperwork because you never bothered to understand what modern military operations actually require. The accusation that forced Tyler to confront his own ignorance and arrogance? But why didn't you tell us? Aunt Linda asked. Why let Tyler think you weren't doing important work? Because telling you would have required explaining classified operations, revealing strategic capabilities, and potentially compromising ongoing missions. It was safer for everyone if you thought I was just an administrative officer. Dad looked uncomfortable. Sarah, when you say safer for everyone, I mean that family members of senior intelligence officers are potential targets for foreign operatives. The less you knew about my actual responsibilities, the less valuable you were to people who might try to use you to get to me. The revelation that my family's safety had always been my primary concern, even when they were mocking my service. So you've been protecting us, Mom said slowly, while we've been, while Tyler's been, while Tyler's been accusing me of being a fraud and you've all been letting him, I finished. The accusation hit the assembled family like a physical blow. They all looked at each other with expressions of guilt and shame, finally understanding their role in Tyler's public humiliation campaign. Tyler, meanwhile, looked like he wanted to disappear into the deck boards. Sarah, I'm so sorry. I didn't know. I had no idea you were doing anything important. Tyler, that's the problem. You didn't know because you never asked. For 7 years, you've been mocking my military service without ever trying to understand what that service involved. But what Tyler said next would prove he still didn't fully grasp the magnitude of his error. But how was I supposed to know? You always gave vague answers when I asked about your work. Uncle Robert's voice cut across the conversation like a blade. Tyler, when a military officer gives you vague answers about their work, what do you think that means? I don't know, Dad. It means their work is classified above your clearance level. It means they're doing something important enough that the government restricts who can know about it. Uncle Robert's tone was getting harder, more authoritative. This wasn't just disappointed father talking to his son. This was a veteran SEAL addressing someone who disrespected military service. Tyler, for the past 7 years, you've been publicly mocking a senior intelligence officer. Do you understand how that looks to other military personnel? The perspective shift that would make Tyler understand he hadn't just been insulting me, he'd been insulting the entire military community. Dad, you didn't mean to disrespect military service? You didn't mean to mock classified operations? You didn't mean to suggest that intelligence coordination is less valuable than combat operations? Tyler looked around the table for support but found none. Even his mother was staring at him with disappointment. Tyler, Uncle Robert continued, when you mock Sarah's service, you're mocking the same kind of work that kept me alive during my deployments. Intelligence officers like Sarah coordinate the support that allows special operations teams like mine to complete missions and come home. But Dad, I support the military. I've always supported your service. Supporting my service while mocking hers shows that you don't understand what military service actually involves. The lesson that was 15 years overdue, but finally being delivered with the authority Tyler couldn't dismiss. I checked my watch and realized I needed to leave soon to make my reporting deadline. The classified call had shifted my priorities from family drama to national security. I need to leave in 30 minutes, I announced. I have to report for duty. Sarah, wait, Tyler said, desperately. I need to apologize properly. I need to make this right. Tyler, you've had 7 years to treat me with respect. You chose to mock my service instead. I don't have time for apologies right now. I have Americans in danger who need my coordination support. The blunt statement hit him like a slap. For the first time, Tyler was face to face with the reality that his family drama was less important than actual military operations. But Uncle Robert's intervention would give Tyler one chance to salvage some dignity from this disaster. Tyler, Uncle Robert said in the tone he'd once used to command SEAL teams, you have 30 minutes to give your cousin the respect she's earned and the apology she deserves. Make it count. Tyler stood up straighter, his father's command triggering some instinct for military bearing he'd inherited but never developed. Sarah, I owe you an apology that's bigger than I know how to give. Start with the basics, I suggested. Acknowledge what you did wrong. I mocked your military service for 7 years without ever trying to understand what that service involved. I accused you of being a fraud when you were actually doing classified work I wasn't cleared to know about. The beginning of accountability that might allow Tyler to learn from his mistake. I publicly humiliated you at family gatherings because I thought your achievements were less impressive than they actually were. I created a narrative about your military career that was based on ignorance and arrogance. Uncle Robert nodded approvingly. His son was finally displaying the kind of personal accountability that military service required. But most importantly, Tyler continued, I disrespected someone who's been serving her country with honor while I've been sitting at home criticizing people whose sacrifices I've never understood. The apology was more comprehensive than I'd expected. Tyler was clearly trying to address every aspect of his behavior rather than just the most obvious mistakes. Tyler, I said, I accept your apology, but I also need you to understand that this can't happen again. Not just with me, but with any military personnel you encounter. What do you mean? The larger lesson that would help Tyler avoid making similar mistakes with other service members. I mean, you need to understand that you can't judge military service based on what people are allowed to tell you about their work. Classification rules mean that the most important military jobs often sound the most boring when described to civilians. Tyler nodded earnestly. How do I avoid making the same mistake with other military people? Uncle Robert answered before I could. You assume that if someone's work sounds vague or boring, it's probably classified above your clearance level. You treat all military service with respect, regardless of whether you understand what that service involves. And you remember, I added, that military families make sacrifices you might never hear about for missions you're not cleared to know about in support of operations that keep you safe while you sleep. The education that Tyler should have received years earlier but was finally getting from people whose military experience he couldn't dismiss. As I gathered my things to leave, the family was processing what they'd learned about my actual military service. The revelation had shifted every conversation, changed every assumption, and forced everyone to reconsider 7 years of family dynamics. Mom approached me as I headed toward my car. Sarah, I feel terrible. We've all been so proud of Tyler's father's military service while failing to understand or appreciate yours. Mom, Uncle Robert's service was public. Mine has been classified. You couldn't appreciate what you weren't allowed to know about. But we could have trusted that if you couldn't talk about your work, there was probably a good reason. The insight that would have prevented years of family conflict if they'd understood it earlier? Yes, I agreed. You could have. As I reached my car, Uncle Robert caught up with me. Sarah, I owe you an apology too. Uncle Robert, you tried to defend me. You told Tyler to drop the subject multiple times. But I never explained to him why he should drop it. I let him think you were just sensitive about your work rather than helping him understand that military personnel often can't discuss their responsibilities. Uncle Robert's military experience made his apology carry weight that civilian apologies couldn't match. I should have taught my son to respect all military service, not just the kind he could understand or that looked impressive to civilians. The acknowledgement that even military families sometimes failed to understand the full spectrum of military service. Uncle Robert, Tyler learned something important today. Sometimes the most important lessons come through difficult experiences. True, but those lessons shouldn't have to come at your expense. As I got in my car, Tyler appeared at my window. Sarah, when you come back from this deployment or mission or whatever it is, can we start over? Can I learn to be a cousin who supports your service instead of mocking it? I looked at this man who'd spent 7 years humiliating me, who'd just learned that his ignorance had made him a family embarrassment instead of a family entertainer. The moment when I had to decide whether Tyler was capable of genuine change or just temporary embarrassment. Tyler, when I come back, we'll see if your understanding of military service has developed beyond just knowing that mine happens to be classified. What do you mean? I mean, I'll judge you based on how you treat other military personnel, not just how you treat me now that you know my work is important. Tyler nodded seriously. I understand. I need to prove that I've learned to respect military service generally, not just apologize for disrespecting yours. Specifically, 3 weeks later, I returned from Operation Silver Eagle to find several voicemails from Tyler. The operation had been successful. A hostage rescue in the Arabian Sea that had required precisely the kind of real time coordination and strategic support that Tyler had spent years mocking. American lives had been saved through logistics coordination that he'd compared to filing paperwork. Tyler's voicemails chronicled a journey of education. He'd started reading about military intelligence operations. He'd volunteered with a veterans organization. He'd written a letter to his father thanking him for his service and apologizing for not understanding its importance sooner. But the most meaningful message was the last one. Sarah, I met a Marine sergeant at the VFW last week. When he told me he couldn't discuss his work because it was classified, I thanked him for his service instead of asking more questions. He seemed surprised that a civilian understood why he couldn't share details. Tyler's voice continued. I realized that was probably the first time in 7 years I'd responded to military service with respect instead of curiosity. I wanted you to know that your lesson stuck. When I finally called Tyler back, the conversation proved that people really can learn from their mistakes when those mistakes have real consequences. Sarah, how did the mission go? Can you tell me anything about it? I can tell you that it was successful and that American lives were saved. That's all you can tell me? That's all I can tell you. Then that's all I need to know. Thank you for your service. The response that proved Tyler had finally learned the difference between supporting military personnel and interrogating them. 6 months later, at Uncle Robert's birthday party, Tyler introduced me to his new girlfriend. This is my cousin Sarah. She's a captain in the Navy. I can't tell you what she does because it's classified, but I can tell you that she serves our country with honor and that I'm proud of her service. The introduction that showed Tyler had learned to respect military service even when he didn't understand it. Today, Tyler works with veterans organizations helping other family members understand the challenges military families face. He's become an advocate for operational security and the importance of trusting military personnel when they can't discuss their work. If this story of family humiliation turned into education and growth has moved you, absolutely smash that like button and subscribe for more stories of people who learned important lessons through difficult experiences. Share in the comments about a time when you had to defend your profession to someone who didn't understand it. Your stories help others feel less alone in their professional struggles. The cousin who spent 7 years mocking classified military service became someone who helps other civilians understand why they should respect what they can't know about. Because sometimes the most important lessons are the ones that force us to confront our own ignorance and choose growth over pride. The BBQ that started with humiliation ended with education. The family member who'd been my biggest critic became one of my strongest supporters. Not because he finally understood what I did, but because he finally understood that he didn't need to understand it to respect it. That's not revenge, that's education. And sometimes education changes people in ways that punishment never could.